Talk show. Recorded live.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 661. My name is Eric Nilsson, and with me today, I have no co-host, but that's okay because on the show, we've got John Furrier, which, if I had to choose an alternative co-host or someone to have a podcast with without a co-host, I would go with Mr. Furrier from theCUBE. Today is Wednesday, September 20th, 2023. We're going to be talking about community and evangelism in the days of cloud computing. So we got John Furrier here to talk about that. And we're kind of doing some old school throwback people. I mean, we got John Troyer in. We might get a lot of, some of the old school people back over the next maybe rest of the year episodes just to kind of reminisce on what it was like in the old days of VMware. So John, hang out. I'm going to do a little bit of news here. Then we'll get to Mr. Furrier. So in the news, the only real news that we need to talk about is Explore. Explore in Europe is going on. We're getting everything set to be over there. The Code Labs, the hackathon. The hackathon will go live tomorrow. They're going to announce it. Watch on Code Twitter, VMware Code, at VMware Code. Go give that a follow. We're going to be talking all about that. We're going to be running some social media on it. The cool thing about the hackathon in Europe this year is that we're getting a custom venue, one of these kind of lab areas that has, cool tables and, whiteboards, and it's kind of like a innovator space. So we're leasing for the night, Monday night, an innovator space. So we're looking for a really good turnout on VMware Code. We'll have, food there for the people. We're going to run it from like 5 to 11 p.m. on Monday night. So watch for that and join a team because that's going to be a really fun event. It's a super cool space. You can get on a team and you can come hang with us. And some of the code teams for US did really neat things. My favorite came in second place, which we talked about on the last podcast, which was, doing PowerShell coding using ChatGPT PowerShell plugin, right? So that they've got the ChatGPT guys built a plugin that allows you to write ChatGPT code, use ChatGPT to write PowerShell code. So super cool there. That was a hackathon. We're expecting some really, really good topics again this year in Europe. Europe has generally been very engaged with the hackathon. We'll probably get buses to go to the venue if the venue is too far away, but we're choosing the venue. It's going to be fun. We're looking to really do a good job with the hackathon in Europe this year. So stay tuned for that. And then again, Explore Europe, November 6th through the 9th. Code sessions are already booked up. I think we got like 3 or 4 left. There's slots open that we're reserving for maybe some good stuff that comes at the very end. At the same time, V Brownbag, Alistair's going to be there. We've got a bunch of community sessions. I think those slots have all been booked with the exception of some sponsorships that Alistair's looking at V Brownbag. So again, everything is lining up good. And then we have the Code Labs, which is ChatGPT API consumption, right? How to set up and write ChatGPT using JSON objects, writing code so that you can automate your ChatGPT requests. We got little nooks there. We got lab tables and nooks with mouse and keyboard and all that. And then we're running a session there all in the booth, all in one place. So it should be a great time. If you're in Europe and you're listening to this, definitely see if you can swing by for a day or two and hit Explore because it's going to be a great conference. We're going all in. And probably the first one that will be acquired by Broadcom in early November. So you'll get a taste of what it's going to be like, the VMware brand as part of Broadcom, which probably isn't that much different from the VMware brand as part of Dell, which probably isn't that much different from the VMware brand that was part of EMC, which is probably not that different from the VMware brand that got founded by Diane Green. So you can get the sense that VMware brand has been through 3 different ownership models. And so we'll get to see what this one looks like as well. So with that, that's about it for the news. So let's get to my favorite of all people, John Furrier. John, thank you for coming back to the show. You're a regular guest, and we thought for the rest of the year we'd do some regular guests. And the topic of doing community and evangelism is great. So give us a 1-minute elevator pitch. What do you do? How long have you been in the ecosystem? What's your gig?
Thanks. Great to have me back on here, your show. I'm in the DC right now in a hotel room. I had a conference. Google Cloud bought Mandiant, which is a threat intelligence company, really high end, and the conversations were great. Also, a lot of cloud, a lot of AI, a lot of China discussions and geopolitics. But it was a nerd fest, big time. So I'm in my hotel room. So apologize for the.
So I noticed you got a black T-shirt on. Is that because you're like doing security now, and so that's kind of the deal? Everybody has to show up with a black shirt
and a black shirt, white hat though.
White hat.
Don't get me wrong, I'm a white hatter. Now, all kidding aside, it's just a great event. Black's the new look for security. That's the new uniform.
There you go.
But yeah, I'm founder of the SiliconANGLE, co-founder of SiliconANGLE, theCUBE. Most people know us for going to the events. VMware World was one of the first ones we went to. I think it was the third official event in 2010. Obviously live in Palo Alto, so Diane Green and Mendel, and they started VMware. Had a lot of friends who worked there back in the early days, and SiliconANGLE is still going strong, 13th year, having a great time, and we're like doing these. It's a victory tour, kind of the old VMware chapters closing and the new Broadcom VMware is emerging. So I like how you got people coming in who have been the journeymen out there, grinding it out for 13 years. Seen every VMware Explorer, VMworld.
Yeah, we got to mention that in the early days, John Troyer actually got some video cameras with Duncan Epping and a couple other people from Europe and tried to do some live streaming at Explorer. One year we did this, like maybe in 2008 or 2009. And, we had tripods with some cameras, and John Troyer is a great guy that he is, but he's not like Mr. Dynamic on camera, but he's, they did a good job. And after he got back from Europe, he just went, I don't ever want to do this again, right? Like this is a full-time gig, running camera crews and being in front of cameras. And John Troyer says, I got this guy, John Furrier, and he does live streaming, right? And he's, I don't know if you even had the Cube back then. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't remember, but he's like, we should invite him to do the community and do the live streaming, and we'll feed all the community interviews and that stuff to him, and I don't have to be sitting in front of a camera 4 days, all day, every day, doing live streams, to which at that time was a collection of nobody, right? Like it was kind of cool to do, but like if you looked at the views of all that stuff, it was like 12, 18, 26, right? And so I guess it would be 2010 or 2009. I don't remember the first year.
2010. He saw us at we were prototyping the Cube at South by Southwest 2009. So that was initially kind of a prototype. And the TriCaster, which was new tech, was just being built for the first time. It was an alpha version, so it was really cutting edge, and we loved it. I mean, I got to say, EMC was our first one, so it was a combination of EMC and then
VMware. I want to say he saw you at EMC because I remember him coming back going, hey, I saw them. John Furrier was at EMC. They had their whole little video gig, and they were doing all kinds of stuff. We could invite him to VMworld. We wouldn't have to do this anymore. We just feed him. Right.
John Troyer and Stu Miniman really were the key early success points for the Cube, because Stu was working at EMC at the time. His claim to fame, he loves telling the story about he signed the NDA between EMC and VMware, which ended up becoming the moment when VMware sold to EMC we call it the steal of the century, $500 million acquisition. And the next year Paul Moritz was the CEO, and that was really influenced our business because EMC had funding because they like to sponsor the Cube, but it was VMware and VMworld that made the Cube what it is today, because it really taught us and reinforced my early days of podcasting and social media days where the community matters. And I'll never forget the response we got at VMworld because that's when it clicked. So Steve Herod, when he was a CTO, really kind of pointed out, I love what you guys do on the Cube. In 2011, that next year, he said something that changed our trajectory. He says the Cube is a community brand. And that changed everything for us, because the videos were then shifted to get the data from the guests and make it really more of a sharing interview.
Yeah. Right.
Podcast style, live at the event where the community is gathering. It's the watering hole. And VMworld at that time, and still has always been, the show. Like it's so good. It's like a borderline industry conference at the same time. And there's always something new going on. So that was a really interesting time. And John Troy is so smart. And then Stu ended up working for us in the queue as an analyst. Now he works at Red Hat. But John and Stu were great. Dave Vellante and I and the team, we kind of grinded it out, and we just kept chipping away at the queue, go to events. We're like, hey, this is where the community is gathering. Let's go to all the events. And there it is.
I remember. I think even the community, we funded some of that. I think we kicked in like 10 or 15K or 20K to you to make sure that your set was there by the second year or third year. And then Explore, the VMworld team at the time, started to kick in money. And then we realized we didn't have to kick in any more money. And after like maybe the third year, we realized, wait, they're paying for everything. Why don't we let them do it? And then they started taking over. The community was cool. You still did a lot of that. But then as the Explorer started, they started feeding executives, right? And I saw the kind of the shift from where you were an analyst looking at the high-end industry, right? As opposed to just when we first started, it was a lot of community, a lot of, like on the feed, people would just feed you, you would do them. But then it became kind of more of a formal industry thing where it became a must have. And then executives had to come to you to be on the show. Otherwise their message wasn't getting out. Heck with the keynote, we need to be on the cube in order to make sure they were getting interviewed. Right.
Yeah, it became quite the thing. I'll never forget. Robin Matlock and Carl Eschenbach were also very important too, because Robin wasn't the CMO at the time. Rick Jackson was, and he loved the cube. He's okay. I totally get it, and had some support. It was Robin Matlock that was the one who kind of turned it into, let's make it a set piece. And she had the designers of VMworld, Jack Morton, design it in as a set element, as a set piece for the event, kind of like when you guys did the hang space, right? Remember those days? It was awesome. And
and the other thing that was happening is that the rest of the event teams, other events, whether it's HP Ignite or Dell, whatever Dell calls it, Dell World, I guess, other ones were funding video groups to come, and they would go spend a lot of money, like $1 million, to have some crew of their own and then go set that up. And I think Robin's brilliance was, hey, we don't need to have a full-time event video streaming group on our payroll. We could just get Furrier to do this, and we'll give him design, we'll give him bigger budgets, and all of a sudden we don't have to, because I think Dell and these guys were spending $1 million a year, $1 million plus a year to do that same function that you were bringing in for $100K a year or something like that.
VMware was pioneering so much. I mean, we could do a whole series podcast on what VMware has done first, and then they made some mistakes. We've all made some mistakes too, but they really were. You guys were innovative, and that's again another point. And I will tell you that not only did you guys give us a little bit of funding and set piece, but we allowed us to do a tin cup sponsorship to the community. And that's how we made money. You guys saved money, and other companies do that, and they put the big sets together, and then they hire hosts that don't know what they're talking about. That's
the other thing.
That's the fatal flaw in these events. Is you got to have the community. It's got to be repped by the people who know the concepts and can riff.
And that's where you've had an advantage, right? In that because you're an external service, you get to go to the other venues, just like you're at a venue right now, right? And so that brings knowledge. So you as an interviewer aren't just sitting and asking the same old questions, the script that the executive comms guy gives you. You actually know the industry. Your team knows the industry. You're going to the industry events, and you can cross-pollinate the intelligence from one event to the next event.
There's a lot of cube clones popping up, and one of the mistakes they make is they hire freelancers, and they read the messages right off the script, and they're analysts just getting paid just to make sure that they stroke the egos and pimp up the guests marketing. We take the philosophy of, okay, let's get the messaging out. They gotta say their thing. Okay, so let's get that out there. Okay, done. Then just probe. Like, ask them good questions, like what's architecture look like for you in a multi-cloud, super cloud world, or hey, do a deep dive on vVols, right, or something in storage. And it's like, and you can see who's got their act together. I mean, ultimately, it's data driven. We want to get the brains on camera talking, right?
Yeah.
Get those people, get their thought leadership out, and nothing thought leadership better than having someone speak. It's like,
Yeah, I think
that
I
person
think
knows what they're talking about,
in
or
the
that person's an idiot.
in the early days in 2011, 2010, 2011, when we were doing stuff with you, everybody, when you're beginning in this kind of, it was like a new space back then. Everybody was looking at views. Everybody was looking at like, hey, how much traffic did we get? And, what ads could we put somewhere? And, we could put it on Spakes TV and we could get 150,000. I remember one of those events we did. Everybody agreed that we were going to just double down on ads. It didn't matter where. And I think we got like 1.6 million views. And, you looked at it and we all looked away. Yeah, because we put something on Spike TV. Everybody was just trying to get a foothold in views. But then as this industry's matured, right, the conversation, the community conversation or the tech conversation, and I think the analyst conversation, I think you even had John Troyer in for a few years where he was a tech analyst, right, giving you the community perspective. And so it's matured, right? You can't just get away with talking heads and high volume dollar spend to get clicks, right? It actually has to be, real content with real listeners engaging with real topics, right? That are educational.
I mean, to me, the formula has always been, I remember back in 2004 when I first started podcasting, when it was just happening. And I'll never forget the moment where I realized that the network effect was all about, lineage of audience, people sharing and forwarding things. And it's a hive mind. It's a network effect. It's bounded by demographic and also connections, right? So, so that we all know what that is now. It's Facebook and all that stuff. But when you get content that's very targeted and vertical, it's like in the NFL channel on cable or MLB, it's that sport all the time. And you're, it is what it is. It's bounded by the audience that's interested in it. And the power law of audiences is where some of these topics are very narrow, but deep in terms of loyalty. For instance, if you're going to come in and talk about threat landscape and China as espionage actors, that market is not, a million people, right? It's not, it's going to be like a couple 100,000, maybe, or maybe 20,000, but there are 20,000 people that are like laser targeted for that demographic. So, you can get 200 views and be like, that's massive. That's 200 views of the right people. And then what's also interesting is analytics don't measure network effect because it doesn't have that click kind of vibe where it's like an affiliate link with a coded UTM code or coded URL, because it's being shared on a different first party platform. And so, YouTube doesn't have pixel callback. They don't have all that stuff. So it's just a whole nother world that people are trying to figure out. And the easy answer is to throw paid at it and saying, hey, we got 30,000 views. Yay. Tell the boss, how'd it go? Great. 30,000 views.
All right. I want to bring this back to some of the topic around evangelism and social media. And we're still in throwback mode here for a minute before we get into where the world's going with multi-cloud and cloud and everything. But going back, I remember you guys, the Cube, built the Twitter storm. I forget the name of the product that we used for a couple of years, which was really fun. Was it Crowd Chat, right? Was it Crowd Chat?
Yep, Crowd Chat. And we also had Twitter Firehose, where we had Twitter analytics coming off every tweet at the event, and we would segment that data in Elasticsearch at that time.
And I remember doing those, and those were a lot of fun because at the time it was controlling the amount of content that was coming from community members, right? And it was actually pretty interesting. And I kind of got to think that, like, as X has showed up, right? Twitter rebranding itself X. Is somebody asked me yesterday, is X dead? Is it gonna survive? Is it gonna like transition to the next thing? Are we gonna even use it, or have we really just turned to live stream video and YouTube and conversational conversational content versus sitting and watching 140 character or 256 character tweets now, right? Like, where do you think any of that's going? Do you think that Twitter and X has a future in tech?
I mean, the self-inflicted wounds by Elon Musk is pretty massive, but I think it does have a future. I think they can survive. I mean, he's trying really hard to burn it to the ground and rebuild it. That's my opinion. I think that's what he's proactively doing. I think he really doesn't care. They could be too big to fail. Some people say, I've said that on my podcast. And I think, you know, they're just getting hit with all these problems because they're not investing in engineering. They've been cutting a lot of people. So, you know, then they realize, oh, we got a bot problem. Okay, well, guess what? He said the answer to that is charge people money and make it a monetary deterrent, if you will. So, yeah, it's a kind of a shit show for X. The loyalists are staying on. I'm on. I stay on because
I stay on.
I like Twitter. I mean, I've always loved Twitter. I love see what my friends are tweeting about and other people. It's gotten a little bit groupthink oriented, and that's my fear of X. It becomes kind of like the right wing of tech or right wing of politics. I'm surprised it took them this long for the right wing to actually pick up Twitter, but you know, it's like radio. You know, it's the Republicans and the right wing always want that stuff, and I think that's a smart move. If I was, into politics, I'd like to have Twitter on my side.
On your side, yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the blue sky or Mastodon because it's just a lot of work for me, and I'm just too old for that stuff now. It's like, that sounds kind of get off my lawn, but I mean, you know, Twitter's fun. I like to do videos, go to a lot of conferences with theCUBE. So, you know, if Twitter goes away, I'd be sad. But I started winding down my use of Facebook a while back. I post once in a while, you know, what I'm up to, just to
I do use it for events. When I go to events or I'm attending something, I do get on Twitter, right? Like if I'm going to a VMUG user group meeting or UserCon, I'll get on Twitter and I'll share it out and tweet it. And then I'm looking at other people and what they're doing and retweeting. So I go hot and cold on this. Sometimes I get totally engaged with it. And then other times, month at a time, I'm not there. Right.
Events are like a great back channel. I mean, Slack is an opportunity to do something, but you know, you can't have a Slack channel for every event. But you know, when I'm not at an event, I hit the hashtag all the time, and that to me, that's kind of like a too long don't read version of seeing what media's out there, who's live streaming, what are some of the commentary. You get a sense of the metadata being the chit chat, the chatter, and I've always loved that about Twitter. And in the aggregate, Twitter data is a chatter network, and you can actually see a lot of analytics that comes out of that, what the vibe is, sentiment, conversation space. It's really cool. I mean, I geek out on that because it's like the pulse of the community. It's like when it's working, it's phenomenal.
So let's talk. All right. So yeah, great history of things, but things are still moving, right? So me and you have been talking about cloud and what is cloud, and I've been wrestling with what does the cloud community look like as we move forward in the cloud world, where, you know, we still got enterprise, we're still installing a vSphere. You know, people reach out to me, you know, experts go, hey, I'm setting up vCenter 8, you know, on-prem. They got questions, so there's still a need for that. But then as we there's still a need for engaging with community, because community answers questions and helps me learn without me needing to go read a document online somewhere, right? I can actually get guys that have done it already and help me through my sticking points, right? So for me, that's what always community was about. It was about just helping me get quicker through what I'm trying to solve for, right? As we go into cloud, right? Like there's cloud architecture kind of components, but like let's get back to my original thought is like, you're going to a lot of events now. Yeah. What would you say the percentage of them are cloud specific solutions versus on-prem solutions? Is it 50-50 now? Is it like 70-30 where most people are in the cloud? Like where do you think this mix is? And then we'll get into like, what does that mean from a community perspective? So where is the mix in cloud versus non-cloud?
I guess from an observational pulse perspective, you know, non-scientific, my feeling is that it's 70-30, 60-40, maybe split, maybe 70-30 more that way. Cloud 70, on-prem 30, mainly because the conversation around apps and cloud native apps and Kubernetes and microservices is hot, right? So, but there's still now more on-premises kind of discussions around AI, and I can train on a model, an LLM on my laptop is a compelling story, right? And you know, obviously the size of the models are changing from large proprietary to a long tail of open source AI models. And then the securing the AI conversation is really getting back to the on-premise thinking. So what I'm seeing is the emergence or the revitalization of the on-premises conversation, but it's in context to cloud computing, not so much data center. It's more operational than it has been in the past. But the on-premise is actually being discussed as the co-location for proprietary information and data. And as AI becomes more
Right.
of data construct, people are having discussions like, okay, I might not want to store that in the cloud.
Right. So you're still using cloud compute resources possibly, but where the data resides, and maybe I'm doing a hybrid approach, maybe I'm doing on-prem data. Like, are they just, is it pure
It's
data?
all hybrid. I mean, hybrid is steady state in my mind. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's not going away. The idea of lift and shift and run all workloads in the cloud, that whole Andy Jassy fantasy is not just a fantasy. I mean, it was his neck. It was his.
Are they admitting to this yet? I mean, you
Yeah,
spent
they are.
there. Yeah.
Amazon has the a walk back. They walk back their stuff all the time, and they do it in couching it from the customer's perspective. They say, well, based upon customer, we want to be in, work backwards from the customer. Well, Outpost was a signal they were going to do that, and they're very clear on hybrid, but because they still win, the cloud operations is a workloads are moving across the environment. So, I really think that VMware, Red Hat, companies that have bet on a multi-cloud or multi-environment topology is the right call. I mean, that's going to be, and the workloads will move across the environments. Some will stay isolated in public cloud. Some will move across. Workloads will move where the data is, and the edge is emerging, and that's going to be driven by cybersecurity. So I think the cybersecurity market is going to evolve radically. That's why we're here in DC for this Mandiant Google Cloud event, which is more about threat detection and really the attacks. Like I was at the MGM last week when it got hacked. I was there at the ARIA. I was part of the MGM portfolio. That ransomware was epic. I mean, it shut down elevators, slot machines, the sports book.
I didn't even hear anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was massive, and Caesars got hit too. They paid the ransomware $15 million, but the group that put it together overseas, they took credit for it. Like they're like 19, 20 something years old, and they're organized, and they're mastering social engineering, right? So again, but I think cybersecurity is going to end up becoming the pace car for what cloud is, because at the end of the day, the breaches are happening. The threats are so massive now that I think cybersecurity and the security conversation will be all about the data, and AI will be a big part of that. And then where that sits and how it's secured will probably dictate architecture. So, I think we've kind of crossed over Gen 1 of cloud, and that's now hybrid. So public cloud won. Public cloud was a big winner. Cloud native SaaS applications like Dropbox were born in Amazon. But now you have competition. If you're a 23-year-old kid and we're in the dorm room, drinking beer and building apps for fun, and we build something cool, where are you going to host it? Like, you've been using Google Docs since middle school because you're 23 or 22 or 21. Right. You might put it in Google Cloud, right? Or something else, dude, but it's not. Amazon is not the first choice now, right? So very different world we're living in right now than it was years ago, and I think you're gonna see that reflected in the market share numbers.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, but you beat me to the question, which is, where is Google? How is Google doing? For a while, they were like, it was kind of like they're just going to take the Google search money and invest in the cloud, and they're never going to make any money. But that's what Google does. They invest all their search money into stuff until they eventually turn it all off. But it sounds like because Google has the office space, right? You either get Microsoft Office or you get Google, Google Docs, right? And that their whole portfolio. And a lot of people do that. Like I know that Broadcom uses Google portfolio, right? So as Broadcom acquires us, it wouldn't be surprised if we turn off all of the Outlook stuff and we move over to,
Broadcom is they have the SEC thing they call it the security LLM built in. That's from Symantec and Broadcom. I'm sure the silicon will have more features as more advanced connectivity challenges connect. I mean, Broadcom owns connectivity. I mean, they're the IO. They do a lot of that stuff. I think you're going to see them have a lot of connectivity as the conversation shifts from compute to connectivity, where things are connected more. Broadcom will have more surface area and more network layer 2 opportunities to protect packets. And lateral movement's a big concept in security. So they will be a player. I mean, no one's talking about Broadcom as a security player, but they're positioned well for it. So, I'm pretty bullish on Broadcom, to be honest with you. I think they're They got Dave thinks I'm crazy. Dave Vellante thinks I'm crazy. He's like, you're a conspiracy. Well, there's got to be a master plan, and it hangs together that they're going to go from silicon to application, super apps to super silicon, and have all the security built in. They could pull it off.
The feedback we got from the conversations that the community guys had with Octane is that the guy is super sharp, right? The guy is super sharp. He's not just a CEO. He knows tech. He knows all the products. He knows what's going on. So wouldn't be surprised if he has a master vision that he's implementing too, right? Because he's a sharp guy.
Got it. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface and I'm kind of putting it together. It's not going to be wild before the rest of the analysts go, wow, this could be a brilliant stroke of genius. Trim the fat from VMware, integrated in as a highly efficient, operational, cash flow driven, add new features, and vertically integrate across the stack, and then up the stack and across connectivity layer 2 and above, and be a major part of that. So, I mean, again, I'm smoking the peace pipe here, but you never know.
Yeah, sure.
What they're thinking. Maybe they just want the cash flow, and that's all.
Right. And that's all there is to it. It's a big cash play. I don't think so. I think the guy has vision, right? And I think he has a plan, and I think he's going to implement to it. And it's not just all about the cash flow, or it was a cash cow. Let's go grab it and wring out the money, right? I think there's a lot of opportunity for them to do that. I think that VMware has been overfunded in a lot of different areas for a lot of years. But yeah, interesting. So we talk about Gen 2, right? Like now I get into super cloud, right? And like what does it mean when we stop paying attention to the lower base layer and we start worrying about what our customers care about, which is the application layer, right? And what are all the pieces that we have at the application layer? And I know you guys have been running the super cloud events for a while, right? And you helped sponsor the vExpert / Vanguard / VMUG community party at Explore this year, right? And we had super cloud branding there, and thank you for the dollars for that. What does super cloud mean to you, and how does this tie into like the moving forward of cloud computing?
Super cloud is got a lot of positives and a lot of shit thrown at it, a lot of tomatoes being thrown. And I'll tell you, it's coming from some of the more elites in the tech industry. Charles Fitzgerald, who's a great blog called Platformomics. He's ex-Microsoft guy, been there forever. I think he started the .NET group. Super smart. We like him a lot. He's a friend. We call him Fitzy. But he's been like, he's going to die on the anti-super cloud hill. So good for him. Other people like Gartner analysts, super cloud, I don't really buy into it. And they think it's just another word for multi-cloud. So I talked to Antoine, who's a former Gartner analyst now at Google Cloud, and he had the same reaction everyone else does, which is, hey, I should check up on it. What is it? I don't understand it. Yeah. And we had never really wanted to be like, go away and build a definition spec. We wanted to put it out there as a framework. There's a Google Doc and everything out there that we put together, and for community input. We saw this trend at reInvent 2 years ago where companies like Snowflake were emerging, and we saw, wow, how can that's so great. They call themselves the data cloud, and they're not even a cloud, but they're on top of AWS. And so, okay, they're paying Amazon the CapEx, and they've got a cloud functionality, and now they're moving to Azure, and they're building this data layer. And Dave and I said, this is like a super cloud configuration. And then it started taking us, we put it out there, and when we've been iterating on this definition, but it's kind of like a multi-cloud construct of connective tissue between the 3 hyperscaler clouds or more. And as customers have multiple clouds, either by acquisition or by app, you run Office, you're on Azure, you got Teams, you're on Azure, you've got cloud native apps, could be on AWS, you got something on premise. That to make things work across those environments and to secure them is very difficult. So there's a whole multi-cloud architecture that people have been promoting, mainly the people who didn't have cloud to begin with, tier 1 cloud, like HPE, Dell, and others, and VMware. And VMware did a deal with AWS like in 2016. I thought it was a great deal, cleaned up a lot of the confusion, has an opportunity to be cloud-like, take the advantages of the cloud marketplace by not being a competitive head-to-head cloud provider, but being a cloud operations network or environment. And I think that is a super smart strategy. Now, multi-cloud is a current situation, but now to make that come together is an opportunity for VMware, right? So, okay, VMware, HPE, Dell, you can have cloud-like software as a service services but it's got to work in the clouds. And Amazon and Azure have to be looked at as playing together well from an application standpoint. Because remember, Amazon cares only about AWS's environment from a security and standpoint. So, but the customer has multiple clouds. So we think that supercloud's a better conversation technically for operators, cloud admins, cloud architects, database administrators, because the control plane and the data planes have to be tightly built across the clouds. And if you want to have multi-cloud applications, you got to build it. And Amazon's not going to build it. They care about AWS. They got a different style. They got a different identity scheme than, say, Azure. So, do you build a team to be just stacked ranked on just AWS cloud and be certified on that? And so it's a cluster, right? It's a cluster screw for everyone. It's like, what the hell am I doing? CISO's got under attack. The dev team's going to build the apps. So multi-cloud, we're very bullish on it, but it's hard. It's going to be hard and very difficult. And so a new supercloud architecture needs to emerge to make that happen. And people are getting behind it because they're like, you're right. And the naysayers like, there's no architecture. Put a spec out there. Like, spec? Like, any ideas?
So I look at this and I'm trying to visualize, like in the old days, we had servers and we had mail servers, calendar servers, and we had web servers and database servers, and then we go into cloud, and the hybrid cloud, where the first generation of cloud was up, we published all that, we moved some of that workload into the cloud. It stayed fundamentally the same, right? It was still mail servers, calendar servers, and app servers and web servers, but it was just running in AWS, and then it was running in Azure, and maybe it was running nowhere else, right? Maybe, I'm sure Alibaba Cloud was cleaning up in that space, right? Like, I'm being sarcastic. But now we move into this, this hybrid cloud model where I can decide that I'm going to put some here, some there, and I'll tie it together with network and maybe some security, right? And I got the be able to motion some across or access data across that. It's really about having the network fabric in both places so that these things can kind of run in both places. But then I look at now what you're really pointing out is that the app vendors are starting to build their own architecture of how to run Snowflake in a multi-cloud environment, right? And when you start looking at the app vendors that have to deal with, and SaaS service vendors, because everything is going to SaaS service with app vendors and APIs across these solutions, that the super cloud is all of those APIs and infrastructures and building this architecture to build apps that function in a multi-cloud environment. So a super cloud would sit on top of some kind of multi-cloud framework, but the super cloud is about all of the apps and the APIs and the architecture to build a running application through using SaaS capability across all of this. And when you start talking about that, then you have to talk to Snowflake, you have to talk to MongoDB, you got to talk to all the people that are building these SaaS apps. Is that the right way to frame this?
Yeah, and also not only talk to those vendors, but you actually have to deal with different kind of data types. For instance, I mean, if you go to siliconangle.com or search SiliconANGLE Uber, we did a tear down of Uber's a complete architecture and how they run things. And the Uber app is a great illustration of how an enterprise built a world-class application. And that world-class application is essentially dealing with real-time information, multiple calls across different data sets and apps internally, and it really kind of brings the best of that world in. And I think Uber will be the test case for what enterprises will need as they completely transform digitally, which means their business will be running real time. And now with AI looking at analytics from the past and all these regulations that are coming around it, AI is going to have to be secured, and it also needs the data from historical perspectives as well as real time. So in the old days was you run a Kafka queue and you stream some data and you deal in the app as a streaming data app, and then wouldn't have anything else. Now you need real time, you need historical, you need personalization. And so you're going to see these apps have to deal with all this, and it will be spanning across clouds. It'll be spanning across other architectures. So this is the super cloud concept kind of in theory, the way we're thinking about it. And that's going to be driven by the customer. Okay, and the customer, like a bank or someone in healthcare, it's not going to be driven by Amazon or the cloud players. Okay, because they're not motivated to help the other clouds. And Azure actually is doing more with others than AWS is. Because AWS is number one, and Azure has to try harder for being the number two player. But they understand how the enterprise works, and the opportunity that's coming down the pike is that the enterprises are not dumb. They're just constrained with budget. But if there's an opportunity to change the cost structure and get ROI on these apps by taking the DevOps movement and moving it into the cross cloud, as you guys call it, services, that's a legit argument, right? So I think that you're going to see this dynamic where cloud next generation is going to look like master of many things, okay, and having a multiple tool player, like as an operator. So if you're a VMware, vSphere, vExpert today, you'll probably end up running cloud ops across environments, not just on premise and cloud, but that's the career path. Cloud operations has to set the table for security and the data.
Yeah.
So control points, data planes are going to be a hot topic.
I have a brother-in-law who is worked for eBay for a lot of years on, and then PayPal in IT, right? And I got to, he was my canary in the coal mine, so to speak, where I would talk to him every holiday, talking about what they're doing, where the trends are. And as of late, his trend has been like, look, they're outsourcing everything, because cloud ops can be done clickety click, right? And they're outsourcing things to India, right? They're taking advantage of labor cost differentials. And he's like, where I'm going. And he recently changed his career, got the job, is in site reliability engineer, right? Where it's kind of a super cloud management position where you have all these services, you have everything tied together. And what you need is somebody that can actually look at it all and make sense of it, right? And make sure when this goes down, who do you yell at? How do you make sure it's not going to go down? How do you make sure it's going to be secure, that you're not going to get Bitcoin blackmailed next month, right? Like somebody has to look at all this and manage this, because that's how the apps are being built and that's how they're running. And he got a position with some modern company that's building a SaaS app, right? And the new position is cloud management and service management, and the position that he calls it is site reliability engineer, where you're looking at all the components and making sure they're all going to work, right?
Platform engineering is essentially what the V operators will be doing, in my opinion. Virtualization was the leading edge technology that really made the enterprise go to the next level. Obviously, historic, perspective there is just you look at what the work that VMware did with virtual machines. This is incredible. That enabled cloud computing and a bunch of great stuff. I think the next era is going to be the next level of operating on top of that framework concept of, okay, I hate to use the word single pane of glass, but ultimately we might be in a dashboard situation where in the military, I was talking to the founder of Mandiant, Kevin Mandia, heads up display is what's in front of you on your dashboard, right? That's the main control point. And then you're going to have sub dashboards around other things. So as automation kicks in, and with AI as a major 10 to 20 year impact, it's going to change how things are operated. And again, security comes into it as well. And then that layer 2 is big. And I tell you, VMware is positioned well, because no one's going to rip it out, right? I mean, it's like,
sure,
it's standard. It's almost like de facto standard in the accounts. So the question will be, what happens next? And, I'm bullish on the fact that it sequences to where the crown jewels are, right? At the end of the day, what are businesses going to run on, right? They're going to run on infrastructure and software, and enable data to be highly available and with high availability, meaning apps tap into data with governance built in. That's what's happening with AI right now. And you're seeing AI is getting better security conversations around securing AI with LLMs and whatnot. But for the most part, that's going to be driven by an architectural conversation, right? And that conversation, who's going to be in the room? The Azure guys? The Amazon team. So, the battle's not get everyone trained on just AWS or, primary and secondary like it used to be for 10 years. I think you're going to have a, jack of all trades on all clouds.
And I feel like the cloud vendors can't drive this. It actually has to be the application vendors, right, that are actually working on this, because the cloud vendors will just try to pin you in on their cloud, and they're going to worry about, what they got offering the cloud. But it's actually the app vendors and the building the solutions and the solution engineers that actually have to, pull this all together and drive this. And it makes me want to ask you, like, you kind of work with the cloud vendors. You also work with some of the app vendors, Snowflake and others. Are they stepping up? And what does that mean for community and evangelizing some of their components? Do a lot of these have their own communities? I know Snowflake has Elsa Mayer over there, so they're building community. But I'm just curious, like, where, when we talk super cloud, and we talk about super cloud community or community for these architects and, cloud operators and site reliability engineers, like, where do we think that, kind of sweet spot is for the cloud app vendors and the cloud vendors coming together?
Well, the super cloud is definitely resonating with the VMware community, mainly because of Kit's involvement in some of the sessions we've had and VMware's interest with cross clouds alignment there. Our community that's developing is mainly in the industry leaders, the emergent startups, and people who are thinking progressively around multi-cloud and looking at it architecturally and skating to where the puck is going. Recently, before VMworld, we put a call for speakers for our last session. We were getting actually some vExperts pinging in. So you're starting to see talks out there in the vSphere and the VMware community that actually, because of cross cloud services and the work that Vittorio and Kit Colbert have been doing with us and evangelizing it, so it's generating there. To the general question about Snowflake and others, MongoDB is one. Like we see, Databricks is one. The community conversation really kind of comes around to who has like ecosystem type features, meaning as we move into much more of a platform conversations in these solution areas. I mean, let's face it, people still use the words ISV, which stands for independent software vendor, ISV mainly, and then, or some just say SaaS company. Well, that's Gen 1 of computing, right? Gen 1, old school and cloud, right?
Sure. Right.
So when you look at Snowflake and you look at these companies, they have ecosystems on top of the Amazon. So in other words, it's not just SaaS. They have a platform. A platform enables value. Those values built by someone on top of it. So when you have platforms, the key to a platform company is that they enable.
Yeah, they got people using their APIs to build the stuff on top of even themselves.
That's where you see the action. When you see disruptive enablement like that, and game-changing benefits like Snowflake completely changed the game on data cloud and data warehousing. So that created great interest and enthusiasm and confidence. And then community just flowered up from that. So I think the way to look at this is, what is the platforms for the future? And some companies will just be tools in the future. But when you see the platform play, which is a system concept of distributed computing, you're going to see players come out with ecosystems. And that's where the communities thrive. And companies that don't take advantage of the community aspect of their ecosystem fail. Right. So,
interesting. I look at VMUG, and I think VMUG is struggling with the same thing, right? Like, because I sit on the VMUG board, and like we look at, like, how do we attract some of the people that are dealing with the multi-cloud and the cloud apps and that stuff into VMUG to have these conversations, because a lot of the VMUG members are looking to upscale their career as well. And like, how do they get this knowledge and engage with one another? And I think there's like the glass ceiling where nobody knows how to break into that next level above what we would call virtualization and vSphere. And you can either go play with AWS, you can go play with Azure, you can go play with VMware in the on-prem and a little bit of hybrid.
I'm very bullish on this, and I'm very vocal about this one point. I mean, VMware with Broadcom has an opportunity to be relevant and modernize its opportunity. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, you don't want to be the person in a company that, that's my dad's company. It was from the 90s, like, what? You want to be cool and relevant, right? That's the key to success. And when you have inflection points that are legit, this is legit next level things are happening. I mentioned Snowflake and platforms on top of clouds, and with AI, it's legit next level. Okay, so it's generational. So I think the opportunity for VMUG and VMware, and you and I have talked about this before VMworld and at VMworld, VMware Explore, is that there's a modernization trend happening that's perfect fit for VMware. And cross cloud services kind of has the narrative for it. And then the story's getting better and better. And even at Explore in Vegas, it was tighter than it was a month ago before, right? So it's hanging together, right? The VMware story, cross cloud, super cloud, is hanging together. And I think that to me is, hey, boss, I'm now certified on super cloud. Well, what's that? I mean, just kind of play with the scenario. Well, I'm the person who's going to manage the entire abstraction layer across multiple clouds to enable value for our company to build super apps so our developers can create our application on our terms with our choice, how to protect and serve the stakeholders and the customers and protect against the ransomware attack or any seams in the network or lateral movement.
I think VMware has a unique opportunity to step in above that glass and break through that and provide a place that you could congregate, right, and engage with these conversations, because no one else seems to be able to do it as well. There's nobody.
If Hop10 has this, you know, once again, you say he's smart, and that's what the feedback is. It probably is. I mean, I just have the respect for the guy. I think he's amazing what he's done with the company. He should have a finger on the pulse that VMware's community is one of the crown jewels. So I'd be curious to see what you're hearing and how that goes down, because you know the community is a force multiplier for VMware. The loyalty across the base of the installed product, the bread and butter, has opportunities to sequence and expand, right? More beachhead inside the company. So if he's not thinking that is a force multiplier on land, adopt, expand of the new Broadcom portfolio, then
he has come out with some good blog articles. He did have a meeting with the VMUG leadership to reiterate that. So I think he gets it. I think he does get it. And now it's just a question of how much dollars does he put where, right? Like there's always, I'm sure there's a lot of people playing tug of war for dollars and headcount and recs, and you know that. And
Hop10 has never wavered off what he said from day one. The numbers will speak for themselves. The scoreboard, he's going to be looking at the scoreboard. He's got to get his EBITDA targets, and he'll drive that. And I think, the more people hit their numbers.
Yep. I think I have a lot of respect for him from that perspective, right? Like he just goes, hey, the money talks, right? If you can get me more SOW, more POCs, more, future revenue next quarter deals going, go do that. Right. Like, and if that means funding community, it means funding VMUG, a super cloud, whatever, as long as you get those new deal pipeline coming through and it's converting to revenue every other quarter, then hey, I'm all in to go spend.
To me, my formula for community is simple. Be transparent as much as possible. Never hide the ball. Get people enthusiastic about it and confident that execution is going to be there and there's going to be, some meat on the bone, right? And enthusiasm and confidence are critical that the community has in itself. And the parent of the community or the sponsor of that community, whether it's a company or a group, has to stay on their North Star and never waver on the first principles. So, for us, it's the Cube's always been free content. Even to this day, we've never put up a paywall of any kind for charging content, and everything's free. And we continue to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've had you for 55 minutes here, John, so I appreciate it. And you're in a hotel somewhere back east, so I appreciate you taking time out in your black shirt and spending time with us. We do post this on youtube.com/vbarbecue. VBARBECUE. So you can go check out what John looks like in his black shirt in the hotel room if you want to see what he looks like, and come up to him, say hello. We're going to have Explore going on next year as well, and I'm sure you'll be there. So John, because we do host on vBarbecue, we always got to ask you, you're out on the East Coast. I think you went to a football game. Your kid was in college, you're telling me earlier before the show. So do you get to eat some barbecue? Do you get to partake in any kind of football traditions back on the East Coast that is worthy mentioning?
Well, I got to tell you, in UNC, North Carolina, they like to party hard. So they had what they call a Marty, a morning party, a DJ out in the house, and starts at 10, games at 3, and that's fun.
Do you buy a wristband so that you can drink? And do you pay the house owner like a wristband so then you can go up to the keg and get as much you want, or they sell
I had celebrity status, the dad buying everything, paying.
Oh yeah, you get to pay for everything.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure. It's awesome. And I did some good barbecue ribs, and I'm now in the nation's capital. They have great oysters out here on the East Coast. So always good food in DC.
I did have good oysters out on the East Coast. Tony Foster, you've been quietly listening. I don't know if you got anything interesting to say about barbecue. I'll give you a second to see if you have. There he goes. He goes on mute.
I'm here. I'm here.
Hey, how's
been
it going?
enjoying the conversation.
Good.
I don't actually have anything to discuss on barbecue. It's sort of a shocker, but yeah, I haven't had a chance to fire up the grill this week.
Well, I did grill this weekend, and I just went to Costco and bought again New York steak prime, grade A. That was expensive, and the stuff was about 2 inches thick, right? And put it on charcoal on a Kingsford. Just it went old school, no smoking, just Kingsford. The right amount of coals. Got the temperature monitor, took it up to 142 degrees on each side, and let it go. It gets nice, a medium, perfect pink. And you're good to go. You can't go wrong with charcoal grilled steak with a pepper rub on the outside. So fun times.
Now I'm hungry.
Mr. Furrier, it did not do my diet any well. Me and you are going to race on who's gonna get thinner quicker. And my week was not a good week. When are you coming back into town?
I might be coming back tonight or tomorrow. I'm deciding I'm going to go back to Boston and hang out for the weekend. But I'll be back tomorrow, I think.
You might go back. Did you hit the storm?
I left the day before the so-called hurricane. It was pretty light in Boston. It didn't hit hard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
right, cool. But now you're gonna go do a loop back because you can't not.
Yeah. I think I'll be home tomorrow, unless I can get a late flight out now. But I'm here for another night. I had a meeting scheduled, and believe it or not, the person got COVID. So COVID's apparently still out there.
COVID's going around. A good friend of ours, which my wife had coffee with yesterday, called us last night going, guess what? I just tested positive for COVID. And we're like, oh, great. Because she had coffee with my wife that morning, right? And that evening she calls going, yeah, I just tested positive for COVID. So it is going around, and there is a new vaccine out there if you really want to play with it. But
I heard if you take a shot of tequila a day, you don't get COVID. So I've been on that playbook. So far, so good.
So far, so good. That's right. That's I'm too ornery to get COVID. So there you go. John Furrier from theCUBE. Thanks a lot for being here. Old school throwback. Great. Also looking forward to building up community around cloud computing, because I think that's kind of where we're all going to go, whether it's VMware, Broadcom, or somebody else. Stay tuned, because I think that's going to be the future of all of our careers as IT practitioners. There will be hybrid cloud, modern apps floating on top of that. We're going to be thrown into the middle of all cloud things over time. So thanks for coming, showing up.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Recording paused.